Okay, on the line with me today, my first ever Skype interview from Wang Chung, Jack Hughes. They've got a brand new album out called Taser Up, and it's the first album in 2 decades from you guys, the first full-length album from you guys in 2 decades.
That's right. Yeah. Where
And
did all that time go?
yeah, and I was actually going to ask, like, 2 decades, that's, quite a while when you look at it.
Yeah, yeah.
What,
Well, we did other things. Nick and I both kind of. Well, Nick worked for record labels for a long time in A&R actually, and he worked for Sony for a while, Warner Brothers. I did more work in sort of production, I guess, producing bands and stuff like that. And I guess around about 2002, three, that sort of time, I actually got. I think it was the experience of working, for ages on bands in albums, and the way that computers have turned production into such a sort of grinding sort of activity. I actually started to get really inspired by jazz musicians and the sort of spontaneity of jazz, and I started a jazz project here in my hometown of Canterbury in the UK,
Mhm.
and that's been got some very good press and stuff. But around about 2005, six, Nick and I sort of actually had the time really and the inclination to want to sort of think about Wang Chung again. And we did a show that was based in LA called Hit Me Baby One More Time. And the premise of that reality show, reality in inverted commas, of course, was that we played one of our hits, Everybody Have Fun Tonight. And we also had to play a contemporary hit. And so we chose Nelly's Hot in Here to do. And I think a lot of people were a bit surprised about that, but that was fun. But that kind of got us back working together and got us a sort of taste for the fact that there's a lot of affection for Wang Chung, and people were offering us gigs and stuff. And so yeah, we sort of started taking it a bit more seriously.
And now with doing different projects for a number of years there, and then coming back in and writing Wang Chung music,
Yeah.
was it very different coming back to writing that after doing different stuff for so long, or was it really easy to get back into the groove of
Yeah,
things?
yeah. I mean, I think for me, I guess I'm by nature quite an eclectic musician. I love jazz. I love classical music as well. My favorite thing is going to like orchestral concerts here in London and stuff, and
Mm.
go to the opera and all of that stuff. And I love rock music and funk and electronic music and stuff. So for me, music is music. It's just like the genre isn't sort of so important. So when I'm writing songs, I guess, and I write songs all the time. So on the new album, some of the material came from the sort of late '90s. Stargazing is probably the oldest song on there, which I wrote towards the end of the '90s. Some of the stuff is pretty much much more recent, especially written for the album. But that kind of style of writing is something that I've always done, will always sort of continue to do. So it's not a question of having to really make a big adjustment. That stuff's there, and when the time's right, it comes pouring out.
And with the new album, with the digital technology of today,
Mm,
and writing the album over the number of years, like you said just some songs from '99.
mm,
What is the sound of Wang Chung today on Taser Up compared to the stuff that people would remember from the
yeah,
'80s?
from the '80s.
Mhm.
Well, people say that this album is a classic mix. Well, rather, it's a mix of the classic Wang Chung sound and a really much more contemporary sound. And that's what we were aiming for, really. We did want this record to sort of well, there's a track on the album called Abducted by the '80s, and we wanted to, a bit like a sort of Back to the Future thing, where Wang Chung is suddenly projected forward from 1985 to 2012, 2013.
Hmm.
Yeah, how the hell will they cope with it? So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we sort of approached it. um, but yeah, with digital technology, in a way, it's easier to make an '80s record now than it was in the '80s, because all of those synths and stuff that were so expensive and so cumbersome to use back in the '80s are just there on your fingertips on a laptop.
Hmm.
So, it's a sort of curious the way things are turned around. But I think working with laptops and computers generally, although there are things about the sound that I think are less great than when we had the old analog sound and everything was a lot warmer and nicer sounding. The ease of use and the way that you can sort of manipulate sound on with digital stuff is amazing. And so so yeah, I think there's more spontaneity on this new album than there was on the old Wang Chung records. Back in the day, we'd be stuck in the studio for months on end, literally, sort of
Mm.
working on records, and spontaneity would drift out the window quite a lot. So with this album, it's much more catching things as they happen, and I sort of love that approach.
So it's more of like a jam vibe these days.
In a way, yeah, yeah. I think it's more, you just sort of catch things, like beginning of there's a song called "Let's Get Along" on the record, and there's a sort of cough and a bit of a sort of guitar strings noise at the beginning, and I just wanted to leave that in because that's kind of like what happened when we recorded it, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, bands I know they've done that for decades and stuff, and I love it. I love those bits on records, So I think we just had a bit more control over how we presented it, and I think it sounds a lot more informal this record than the '80s albums, which were quite sort of what should we say, quite tight sounding.
Very, very polished kind of sound to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And with the digital technology of today, I mean, is it easier? You get an idea. Is it easier just to kind of run to the laptop or run to your office and record
Yeah,
something real quick and kind of have that demo?
sure is. I mean, I record a lot of things on my phone these days. Just capturing ideas, and I got a nice piano in my house. Sometimes I'll sit there, but it's great. Just hit record on the phone, and you can capture ideas, the spirit of them. I know back in the '80s you had you could get a dictaphone or something like that, but I never they were never really user friendly, those things for me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tended to write things down on paper, because I can do that. But when you write music down, it's kind of cool, but you don't always capture the feel of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas when you record it on a phone or whatever, even though the sound is a little shitty, it captures the feel, and that's so important.
Yeah. Now, for the most part, you guys have been a band for a little bit over 30 years.
Yeah,
Despite taking like a little break to kind of do some other stuff.
yeah,
As far as being a band that long, well, it's a lot of hard work. Especially like if you kind of take time away, you kind of get used to doing other things. Was it really pretty easy to come back from doing the other projects once you decided to come back and do some shows and
yeah, yeah. I mean, just really enjoyable actually. We sort of 2009 we did a tour with a few other '80s bands. There was ABC, Berlin, Cutting Crew, and us. And yeah, we did a sort of a US sort of coast to coast kind of tour, and I think Nick and I just loved it. It was great to be playing back to sort of big audiences, and just really cool. And the following year we did some gigs, just like off our own bat, as it were, and festivals and fairs. And I remember doing a festival in Milwaukee, actually, where we sort of it's like we were on about 5 in the afternoon, I suppose, something like that. And it was like a great big tent, which was pretty full when we went on. But as we played, it got more and more people sort of showed up and seemed to be really into it. And we played Dance All Days towards the end, and people just went absolutely crazy, and I stood on the edge of the stage, and I just thought, come on, Jack. Do you know what I mean? Just remember this. This is what people would cut off their right arm to experience,
yeah.
And it's just a fantastic feeling.
Now, I mean, back when you released, Everybody Have Fun Tonight, did you think, so many years later that you'd be in that situation where there's so many people, singing that song or any other song you'd written, like, so many, like almost 3 decades later?
I guess not. It's like, when I wrote Dance All Days, I just wrote that at the time I was teaching guitar at a school, to earn some cash, and I remember sort of getting the basic ideas for that song, during a time when a kid didn't show up for her lesson or his lesson, and so what was I thinking when I wrote Dance All Days? I don't know. I was just like writing the next song I was writing,
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to always approach it in that way, I think once you start trying to think about the consequences, what might happen or whatever, you just kind of lose it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always been about the music. I still love music. I still love listening to new music, and probably appreciate the great artists that I've always loved more than ever, really. The Beatles and Bob Dylan, and even the sort of prog bands that I was really into when I was a kid, which I'd sort of lost favor with in a sense during the '70s and '80s, when punk was such a big thing, and you kind of kicked all that sort of stuff out, but nowadays, I guess because of the way music is so accessible, you can just have it all, you can enjoy it all, and so music for me is well, it really is my life.
Yeah. Because I just always like one thought I've had, it's always like a random thought. It's like listening to, something like the Beatles or Led Zeppelin. It's like, man, did these guys standing in that garage have any idea, or whenever they're writing whatever song, like when they're writing Stairway to Heaven or, Sgt. Pepper's, it's
Yeah.
like, did they have any idea the impact this would have, or was it just kind of like an idea? They're kind of like, well, this seems like it'd be okay, like.
Yeah.
So it's always like kind of like, does anybody really know the effect they're going to have on music for years to come?
Yeah, I
Or
don't think you do, and I'm sure those guys didn't, it's they were just doing what was coming naturally to them, and I think especially with the Beatles, they were so kind of experimental in their approach. They were never just recycling what they'd done on the previous album. It was always moving on to something so radically different. There's a lot of risk doing that, but somehow they managed to take everybody with them. I think, pretty much up until, the White Album at least. After that, I think it got a little blurry.
yeah.
But it just amazing, And same with Led Zepp, like amazing songs and amazing progression from album to album. How they sort of kept that all together, just fantastic.
Now with the new album just being released last year, throughout 2013, is there any plans to take the show on the road throughout the U.S. or the U.K.?
Yeah, that's very much what we want to do. We have been, as I say, been touring for the last couple of years. Well, last year we did some gigs in the UK, and we used a small band. It's Nick and myself. Nick plays bass and sings. I play guitar and sing. So we have a keyboard player and a drummer, which is kind of all we need, really. So it's a more stripped down, sort of raw version of the songs that you get when you see us live.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that our live show is really cool, actually better than it's ever been in many ways, and I think we're better musicians now than we were back in the 80s. Certainly I feel that I've really worked hard with being a better guitar player and hopefully a better singer and stuff. That's not a deliberate thing, but just because I feel I sort of take it more seriously now in a way, and I think music is one of those things where I know the way it's sold is that it's all about young people and it's all a young thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all cool, but it is something that you can study all your life and you never quite feel that you've got to the end of it. Do you know
definitely,
what I mean?
yeah.
But with those things that you study all your life, I think you do get better at them.
And with web presence, if anybody wants to find out how to find Taser Up in stores or a digital outlet for it, or even just to find out where you guys are going to be once you hit the road, as far as the web presence goes, where can they find you on the internet?
Well, wangchung.com, www.wangchung.com is our website. But you can follow us on Facebook as well, Wang Chung, the band. You can get us on Facebook, and Nick and I do run that site. So if you message us on that, we will get back to you personally, as it were.
Very cool.
So yeah, those are the two main things that we use. Twitter's there as well, but I can't quite get my head around Twitter somehow. So.
And so wangchung.com, the official site, pretty much the hub for everything. You'd probably say, right?
That's right, yeah. And from there you can get to iTunes or Amazon and order Taser Up. At the moment, Taser Up is just an online sort of digital download thing, but we are planning to do physical stuff later in the year, and especially when we tour and stuff. I think first off we'll sell the gigs to the fans, sell the CDs to the fans who come to the gigs, and then we'll make it more generally available, I think.
Very cool. So like we were saying earlier, wangchung.com is the website for the hub for if you want to find Taser Up online. It's got all the links. You can also get links to the Facebook page, and make sure you check it out. Taser Up in stores as of last year. First album in about 2 decades from Wang Chung. Jack Hughes, thank you for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure, Joey. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.